What do Falcons do? Rise up. Welcome to Rise Up Reactions, the show where we talk all things Falcons, NFL, Georgia sports, and in general the sports news of the day. I'm your host, Dr. Lee Denning, the Golden Heart Doc. As previously stated, please check out my video on Golden Heart Syndrome and me to understand a little bit better about my face. If you have not done so already, it'll really help you understand a little bit more about my background. But anyway, getting into today, just wanted to take a quick moment. The Falcons have not had any more major moves since I posted my video previously. As of this morning, 3/16/23 at about 11 a.m., give or take a little bit. Just wanted to really quickly talk about some of the biggest trades that have happened so far and what I think that's going to mean for teams going forward. And just to start off the bat here, we have the Jalen Ramsey trade, cornerback for the Rams getting traded to the Miami Dolphins. For a 2023 third-round pick, which is 77th overall, and Hunter Long, so Dolphins lose a tight end, and he's another guy that I really won't talk about too much in this trade because I don't think he really moves the needle all that much. But I feel like the Rams gave up overall more than they're getting here. The Rams, I think, are finally to a point where the chickens have come home to roost with all of their basically trading away future picks to try and win now. And it paid off. I mean, you won a Super Bowl. I don't know what more you can ask for. Matthew Stafford got a Super Bowl. It's hard to be good consistently year after year. And I think a few things were working against them last year. Their offensive line was a mess, so they do need to be looking for that in the draft this year. I don't think they have a first-round draft pick this year. I'm pretty sure that goes to the Detroit Lions this year as part of the compensation package for Matthew Stafford from last year or 2 years ago when they made that trade. But either way, I do think that this helps out the Dolphins, who were pretty bad in the secondary this past year. They were thrown on by teams left and right. They were one of the worst passing defenses in the league. Jalen Ramsey certainly is a pretty good shutdown corner. He gets beat from time to time, and there are people that say he's really not that good. Well, then watching him play, for the most part, I would say that's not accurate. A.J. Terrell, same thing. Very good most of the time, and then he has his bad games where he gets beat deep by Michael Thomas for a couple of touchdowns. You're going to find these players have bad days from time to time, but for the most part are solid overall. You're not going to find many better corners in the league than him, and he sure will help anchor their team going forward. So now the Dolphins have a second-round pick because of tampering last year. They don't have a first-round pick this year, and now they no longer have a third-round pick. So we'll see what they decide to do here with their second rounder, but they should not be making any moves on day one as they don't have a lot of draft capital to invest this year into moving into the first round unless they're going to trade a player to do that as well. But anyways, I do think Jalen Ramsey makes the Dolphins a marginally better team if Tua comes back and is healthy. I think that they're going to be fine this year, and they should be competitive in what probably will be the most competitive division in football. Now, reasons for it being the most competitive division in football. We now know that Aaron Rodgers is for sure going to be traded to the Jets. It's just a matter of compensation. This came out after Aaron Rodgers broke the news on Pat McAfee yesterday. And again, it's not necessarily something that's unexpected, but a lot of people are going to come back out and say, oh, I knew it all along. Oh, this was always going to happen. It was inevitable that he was going to get traded. No, it wasn't. That is really not doing the situation justice. You're really painting a black and white picture there of what was or wasn't going to happen without looking at all of the gray that went into it. Rodgers was very vocal about saying when he went into his darkness retreat, whether you like that or not, think it was a stupid idea, it doesn't really matter. He was about 90% sure that he was going to retire, and he came out of it thinking, hey, I'll give it a shot. I will meet with the Jets. I will do whatever the team wants to do. And it certainly worked out for him in that regard to where now he's going to get traded at some point this offseason to the Jets. He's going to get one more shot at a ring, maybe a couple of years here, and kind of follow in that Brett Favre path to go and play for the Jets after leaving the Green Bay Packers, though I do think he's going to find a little bit more success. Now, we don't know the compensation yet, so it's hard for me to say what the Packers are going to get, but I suspect it will be the 13th overall pick in the first round. I don't really see a situation where you don't get that pick if you're the Packers, and they probably are going to look to take a wide receiver or some sort of complementary piece, maybe an offensive lineman, to try and help Jordan Love as much as possible this season as he starts and leads the Green Bay Packers finally after 3 years sitting on the bench. For the Jets, they went 7-10 this past year, And a lot of that was because of really close games and bad quarterback play with a solid defense and pretty good complementary pieces to a quarterback if they just had somebody that could throw the ball. I think they are easily 2 to 3 wins better right out the gate with Aaron Rodgers. You can't tell me that he is not significantly more competent than the quarterback play that they've received from Mike White and Zach Wilson and Joe Flacco over the last year. You can't tell me that he's not a significant upgrade, at least on paper. Even though he didn't look good at the start of last season, he came alive towards the end and had the Packers in a position where they could have made the playoffs. It was a win and in situation. So certainly a guy that I think will benefit the Jets, and I think it makes them a strong contender to compete, if not win outright, the the AFC East. So that's probably one of the biggest moves overall. Another big move involving a corner is Stephon Gilmore. He played this past year with the Colts. Now he's gone on to the Cowboys for a 2023 fifth-round compensatory pick. I think he's still a very good corner with a lot left in the tank, even though he's getting a little bit longer in the tooth overall. Certainly a guy whose status has been raised up from his performance in the Super Bowl against the Falcons, the 28-3 comeback win for the Patriots, and a deflating loss for the Falcons. But a guy who has been pretty good overall. I think it makes the Cowboys a little bit better on defense in the secondary. I think they are now a stronger defense. They were already a strong defense, and now they're a little bit stronger going into this season. And I think the Cowboys will probably end up winning their division this year just because the Eagles are losing so much talent. But it will be a tight race between the Eagles, the Giants, and the Cowboys to win that division, as I also think the Cowboys have – or not the Cowboys, sorry, the Giants have improved as well, which we're going to get to in a second. Before I get to the Giants, I want to talk about another move, NFC South. Shaq Mason, one of the all-star guards of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. He is being traded to the Texans for a 7th round, and along with the Bucs' 7th round 2023 pick for the Texans' 2023 6th round pick. So, kind of a wash there, basically a pick swap, and you get Shaq Mason. I think that is certainly going to help whatever quarterback goes to the Texans, whether it's Bryce Young or C.J. Stroud, depending on what Carolina does. But I do think that that's a pretty solid move overall for the Texans. Seems like they are making some good moves here in the offseason. They have some new management from a GM standpoint and a head coach standpoint. And I think this is a solid move to help bolster that offensive line and really help protect whatever young quarterback comes in. As far as what the Bucs are doing, they're offloading cap. They really don't have a lot of cap space to work with. I was kind of surprised they were even able to sign Baker Mayfield. I don't know the deals of that yet, but I'm going to probably try and look into that contract a little bit later today. But they're in cap hell, so they really need to offload some of their guys to try and be better for this year, or at least be competitive this year. I do actually see Tampa Bay finishing last in the NFC South this year, purely based on the fact that they're losing a ton of talent. They are bringing some key pieces back, but still they're going to have questionable quarterback play. They're not going to have solid running back play, most likely. Receivers, I expect them to possibly trade Mike Evans or Chris Godwin at some point this offseason because of the money involved in paying them. More likely to be Evans because he has the contract that's a little bit older and probably has more money that's already been paid to him. But we'll wait and see what happens with them. I don't think this trade makes them better, though. I don't know what talent they're going to find in the 6th round to potentially replace Shaq Mason or what they're going to do there. You certainly do have guys that evolve over the course of their NFL careers to become starters, like Caden Ellis, who is now with the Falcons. Started off as a 6th or 7th round pick 4 years ago, and then ended up being a banger of a starter this past year for the Saints, and now is getting paid as a Falcon on kind of a wild shot there, but we'll see. Then you come back and you have 2 more big trades that have happened. One of them is bigger than the other, but I said I'd talk about the Giants. So Darren Waller, tight end for the Raiders, going to the Giants for the 100th overall and still a 3rd round pick. I think this makes the Giants better. They've retained Saquon Barkley. They have retained Daniel Jones. They do need to build up their receiving help, and this will certainly do that. Darren Waller is one of the top 5 or 6 tight ends in the league in terms of receiving tight end. I think this is a move that makes a lot of sense for them in terms of getting a solid a solid drop-off option for Daniel Jones on almost any given play, while they look for a solid wide receiver. Obviously, Kadarius Toney didn't end up working out for them, but this is kind of funny that this was the Kadarius Toney pick that ended up getting Darren Waller. I think that's a solid trade overall if you just look at it purely from what was given to get to where they are now. So I think that's a fine upgrade for them in terms of a receiving tight end. And I think that it makes the Giants a lot more competitive. They certainly need to get a better wide receiver than I think Sterling Shepard signed back on with them, if I'm not mistaken. But they do need a little bit of help otherwise to really be a solid team this coming year. I look for them to maybe go wide receiver in the draft, maybe heavily in the second or third round. Then we come back and have possibly what is the biggest trade of the offseason so far, and it involved a large number of picks. It was the Carolina Panthers trading their first pick, which is the ninth overall, the 61st pick overall, which is the second rounder, a 2024 first rounder, a 2025 second rounder, and the icing on top of the cake that is overflowing and made the cake so sweet that you just couldn't help but buy it. DJ Moore going to the Bears on a fairly decent contract for a few years to be the number one wide receiver for a rising Justin Fields. This was a home run for the Bears. I think they instantly go to being one of the top competitors in the NFC North this year, especially with the departure of Aaron Rodgers. That is going to be a highly competitive division this year. I think, honestly, it's hard to tell who's going to come out on top. If I had to guess, the Lions were the most electric team at the end of last season. If they can keep any of that going for the future, I think the Lions probably end up finding a way to be number one in the division, followed closely behind by Minnesota, and maybe the Bears also being very competitive, with the Packers being in the mix somewhere in there. I look for this to possibly be a division that's decided by a total of 2 to 3 games overall throughout the course of the year. Definitely going to be a division that could beat itself up and have a team come out 11-6 as the number one seed in that division. With that being like maybe the third seed overall on the NFC side for playoff contention. But I think they're going to beat each other up a lot this year. I think the Minnesota Vikings were incredibly lucky on a number of games last year. Otherwise, they probably were more like a 10-7 or 11-6 team. And the Lions probably, had they played just a little bit better. A couple things didn't go their way early in the season, but they were the most electric team to watch at the end of the year last year. So I really like the Lions' chances this year to win the division. Sorry, Tom Grassi, I know you're probably hurting from losing Aaron Rodgers here and knowing that your team has the chance to be bad. Who knows, though? Jordan Love may step in, and you might get lucky and have a third Hall of Fame quarterback stepping in right behind where Aaron Rodgers was. So that's going to be the biggest trade of the year so far. Two more small trades. One involves the Falcons. Jonnu Smith, tight end from the Patriots, to the Falcons for the 7th round pick this year. I don't know who you're going to find better for a 7th round pick than Jonnu Smith. The only thing I don't like is having to pay him $10 million. I think it's actually $10.8 million after the roster bonus this year. That's the only thing I don't like. Next year, though, he's not really owed any money if we choose to pay all of the dead cap that would be owed this year. So we could move on for him, but he's a solid veteran presence who's worked with Arthur Smith in the past. I think he makes us better, and I think this means that we're probably not going to re-sign MyCole Pruitt, even though I do like MyCole, and he was a solid tight end 2 for us this year, had a lot of production in that role. He never looked electric. I think Jonnu Smith is a better tight end for the job than he is, but if we can retain MyCole, I would certainly like to do that as our tight end 3, or maybe even the rotational piece with Jonnu Smith there. And then finally, we have safety Chuck Clark going to the Jets from the Ravens. The Ravens have had solid defensive talent for a long time. Chuck Clark is no different. He's not necessarily their best safety, but he is a solid contributor to them for them on defense. Now going to make the Jets even better. He shouldn't necessarily start, but probably will be a solid rotational piece for the Jets. And again, all you're doing is making that defense better. That was for a 2024 7th round pick, so it's not even going to be affecting this year's draft. I don't know that it's a high enough pick to get for Chuck Clark. I think you would have preferred to have gotten a fifth or sixth rounder next year if you're trading future picks like that. But again, we don't really get to say what these NFL front offices are doing. But so far, those are the only major trades that have happened at this point. We're still awaiting a lot of news from the NFL today. We're only in the second official day of free agency, and a lot of things can still happen. But guys, that's all I got for you. I'm really trying to hit 500 subscribers by the end of the 2023 football season. Would love to get that to that number, if not more. Thank you for watching, liking, sharing, subscribing, and as always, rise up.